Hi, everybody. I hope everyone's keeping well and getting their shots if they're available, especially in the US. Not quite available here, but it's on its way. Uh, we have a few questions tonight, and one of them is from Carol Martin in Nashville. And she says, I'm wondering how important it is to have a body. Good question. It seems our essence remains on other levels. Can we advance or become more helpful on the astral or other levels? Or is that solely possible in coarser realms? Well, I think we have to pause and think about what we really believe and what we have been trained to believe in pretty well most of our lives. First of all, we've been trained to believe that the body is really not very spiritual, or the physical is not very spiritual. And then we go on to express how the body is, let's say, tends to get in the way of being perfect somehow. I've got a real problem with this one, but I can see the logic. The logic is, especially around sexuality, where the body is the thing that we involve with in a sexual interaction. Uh, and so, therefore, it pretty well gets a bad rap uh, based on our religious backgrounds. Not all of them, but some of them. And based on the idea of it's the tool that we function with, that we use to engage with others, whether it be kind of not very nice, or excellent. So, sorry about that. I just did a continuum there. Prone to do that. So, but I don't agree with that. I think the physical form is the core of our relationship with existence here. And it is that way because it is that way on these planes, very physical planes. Therefore, we need a physical form. As I often have talked about, our brain has a nervous system, and it moves into literally these physical plexi along the spine, and we use these sensing mechanisms to perceive what's going on in the outer world, so we can make sense of it by engaging reflexively, often, yeah, and sometimes consciously, in the inner world. Inner world meaning your relationship with how you're thinking or responding to whatever you think you see. Because, in fact, what you basically see is a virtual world. So many times we've found that that is really basically true. It's just reality. It's well known to science. But at the same time, our particular version of these coarser worlds is a physical, emotional, mental construct. And we sense this world optically, through sound, through our sensing response mechanism, which is really identifiable and identified by our particular biased thoughts on what's going on in between people and between families, between nations, uh, between everyone else in the world. Very physically oriented. Um, I think I said this last time, last Thursday. When you're involved with going out someplace, you fix your physical body up because you want to present something that is, relatively speaking, reasonable in the world of physical bodies. But the astral or emotional engagement is quite biased, the same as the body is very biased. Your brain is part of the body. Sensing mechanism is part of the body. But deeper down, there's a continued bias and a continued engagement with the energy around you, of course. We have dilemmas. We have ideas about, and many, many, many ideas about what the astral would be, what the mental levels would be. If you want an interesting one view, you could look at the Upanishads, for example, and the first book, I think, I'm not sure if it's Isha or you can look it up. And there is a, especially with Sri Aurobindo's version, which is difficult to read, but worth the read, where you can see that there are different stages of development. Well, we don't have any trouble with different stages of development, but one of the stages of the universal flows development is the core level of our physical engagement. It makes perfect sense. Now, when you start engaging consciously with the environment around you, you start to look at things slightly differently. And I'll try to talk a little about the astral truth. But right here in this physical form is an inner engagement. One of the questions was, can you talk a little bit about an inner engagement? Well, you may find in your life that you have reactions and they're very reflexive. You respond and you engage or smile and be happy with a joke or whatever it may be. And there is a determination about how funny the joke was or how miserable an expression is or whatever it may be. Our dilemma is that in these coarser levels, our focus is primarily on a version that relates to us. How we get to that versioning is we read material. We have biases based on family backgrounds. That's in the astral plane, it's in the emotional or mental planes, it's in the physical planes, and there are many physical planes. There's not only this one. And when we're dealing with these kind of, let's say, personalized biased interjections around and the world and watching the world and trying to make sense of the world, we value our own bias as we're seeing other people's biases. And we have to have a response to those biases and we assess them. Some are very strange to me, but the other person may think mine are strange. Absolutely. It could well be from another outlook. A strangeness about how I think or believe. This happens all over the world. This is consistent. How we run our nations, how we run our families, how we are involved with the world itself, how the world decides what should be and shouldn't be. Nations do, and then down the line, down into the individual's orientation, and outward from the individual's life. This is all related emotionally, mentally, and physically. If we didn't do things physically, for example, if somebody talks physically like I'm talking now, but I'm not writing this down. If you write it down, there is a sincere thought that that must be much better than only talking about something. It's in there as a bias. And it's to some degree the way we look at the world. Uh, it has its level of validity. But we're talking here about an understanding that many have, that once you get into the level of the astral plane, which is only a versioning of emotion, physical, emotion, mental, deeper personality orientations, and all of those are sandwiched together when you're in the astral plane, conscious of being out of the body. For example, using that particular version of astral, because you're already in the astral plane, very physically engaging with life. You have responses, astral responses, mental responses, perhaps. It's rarer to have a mental response. Emotional mental response, not so rare. You see, I just sliced that one up a little bit. And it's a way of looking at it. If you're looking at it from inside you, as opposed to picking up a book and reading it and saying, this is the way it is, then if you look at things from inside you and try to relate to that belief system or bias, natural bias, it's okay, then you try to fit one way of seeing things, your way of seeing it, into a bias that is recognized by some. It's a valid way to do things. We do this all the time. Looking at it from a different perspective. When you're looking at you, inside you, and you see you engaging with the world from a personalized view, then you're validating almost automatically what you see because it's reflexive. Now that's emotionally physical or mentally physical. Think about it. Your physical form has emotion in it. Your endocrine gland system is set up that way. Can't be any other way. Now, here's the next step. If you are out of your body looking at you and you're watching you do things, you may, and I emphasis on the may, you may look at you as if you're just another thing you're seeing, another person. That is not normally the way you do things on those lower level of the astral and mental planes. What you do on those planes is you're out of your system, you become valued by you. Self-important is the word, or self-biased. I like that word a little bit better. And you are validating you reflexively based on an astral or emotional or mental level because you can do something others may not be able to do. Or if you learn how to do this, you feel extra valued, but you're still acting the same way you did inside your system. That is the lower levels of any plane. And we have the ability to shift levels on the physical plane and consider using a kind of mind framework, or one could say it's considered a mind framework, but a mental facility which allows you to perceive what you're doing physically, what you're doing emotionally, what you're doing mentally, and not necessarily agreeing with it. Now, this is a different level of engagement with an inside looking. It's not looking for to judge anything. It's looking just to see. So the utilization of the solar plexus is very strong in this. And there are many techniques that you can use to do exactly that. But if you cannot observe yourself while you're in your body, trying to be respectful of yourself and others, trying to understand how you function. How is it that I function under circumstances? Oh, I do that. Oh, I do this. Oh, I do that. I didn't know I did that. And besides, I should do that because under these circumstances, this is the right thing to do. We get biases about this as well. Biases are the things that we have that allow us, at least initially, to engage with life and protect the way we act, the way we are, the way we assess others. Pulling back from those biases, suddenly we're shaken with the idea that, oh my goodness, I assess these people all the time, everybody all the time. And of course, I come up with a response. It's very quick. That means I must be very bright. No, your reflexes are really good in terms of your defense of what you believe must be valued, more valued than someone else's. This is the nature of a form here. It's part of the nature of being a human being. I'm not calling this negative. I'm calling this as what we do. And we do it in a way that gives value to us. Because once again, we're very vulnerable on these planes because we need to have relative value. Otherwise, we will denigate ourselves, put ourselves down. And that is no help whatsoever. If we flare ourselves up, that's also just as limiting to us in our movement into different stages of development. Why would that happen? I think this is within the line of your question, Carol. It would happen because if you reach into another state beyond the personalizations, you suddenly come face to face with the realization that you have an awareness on that level, and you're okay with being aware of another level, that level which includes the physical, the emotional, the mental, personalizations. Sometimes it's held right there in the emotional, reflexive mental structure, and you can't see your personality, and that you should apply any kind of difference to it or try to adjust to being not so frustrated or angry or over extensive with relationship to a personality's capability. This is not what we're taught here. we are taught in kind of a strange way through our movies, through our educational systems, through our vulnerabilities, and through our presentations of self to others, that we must value ourselves as more important than somebody else. This unfortunately is real, and it causes all kinds of problems all over the place. But I don't think we can get out of this so easily, because our relationship with valuing presents to us a self or a number of images that make us feel comfortable in our world. That doesn't negate the world, and it doesn't negate us. It's how we have been developing virtually, literally virtually, but all over the world that way. So, on a continuum, once again, one could say there are coarser interjections that relate to us as individuals, and there's a broader purview, and then we become able to see ourselves in action a little bit in the middle, some kind of middle ground, and begin to wonder why we do what we do. You don't have to tell anybody about that part. As a matter of fact, it's better off if you don't. Because once you begin to do that, you start to present again. Oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that. This is the nature of salesmanship. And inner growing isn't salesmanship. It's recognition, understanding, learning, noticing the cycles of learning that continue over and over again. Then, if you know that, then you know there's going to be cycles of what you can perceive or observe in you that will warn you that cycles are occurring currently. One other thing that is really pretty interesting as an observation, that as you grow, and you can notice the growing, the perception getting stronger, recognition, even for some of you, that where these actual vortexes or chakras or zephyrat or centers are, and you say, my goodness, that's not a belief anymore. It's real. I can perceive them inside me. They are touching me here. They're touching me here. They're touching me there. There is a realization that something is real beyond what you believe has to be real to satisfy the biases or the beliefs that you already have. It doesn't negate belief. It makes them broader. Mind you, understanding that it makes them broader as opposed to creating another belief. These beliefs, they're not created. They've been around for a long period of time, thousands of years. Perception has not. It has been around in a rare mode. We would much rather be able to perceive consciously in ways that we're told would be spiritual or metaphysical. That way, you can prove that you're spiritual, you see. Makes sense in view of the way we've been taught. Makes perfect sense. So, our natures, literally, on these planes, are the way they are for survival on these planes. And there are some strange needs in terms of how to just basically survive during war times. Strange war. Why are we fighting? Yeah, well, we're fighting because this group wants to be better than that group, and that group's getting too close to being more able, and we've got to be careful, and then that group has to prove they're more able. And we do these things because they're extensions of an individual personality. It happens also in personalities, corporations, nations. This versus that. I think this is part of our animal nature. And I think there is a possibility of a propensity that can be shifted into another level of propensity or potential, continually moving in a direction that allows us to be consciously aware that we're moving, yet conscious in the manner as if you're seeing it from the inside, as opposed to having to walk around standing in a street corner telling everybody that you're really, really able. Well, you choose your own street corners, and I would choose mine, and you would choose yours, and yours would be better than mine, or mine would be better than yours. It's just quite interesting, very inflationary in terms of personality. But the personality, look at, it's not negative at all. It's partly part of the physical orientation, and it's there so we can try to communicate with each other and help each other, perhaps. Also, energy is that way as well. You mind, Carol? I'll just take a look at this to see if I've left something out that I wanted to. Just one couple of things. I remember if you've watched that DVD the last DVD that was there about meetings with remarkable beings, that DVD is trying to show that these beings who are quite physical. I know we've talked about, beings that are external from us, various forms of beings, angelic beings, whatever you want to call them. And I have no problem with those beings as a reality. There's all kinds of different life in our universe in very high states, perhaps more than we even understand or can. And I would agree that that's probably more the truth than much of it that we believe. But that's an indicator of physical beings on these planes. They don't have words behind them. They don't have titles behind them. They don't have a relationship with a need to believe one way versus another way. That to them is less interesting. They may be a part of these various groupings that we have, but for reasons that might be termed service or helpful to us so that we can begin to understand something differently. Their parlance is energetic. They express themselves at those other levels energetically, as opposed to talking about it. They're silent about what they're capable of being able to do. They realize that if they are not, then there will be a tinge of bias attached to it based on whatever belief system they happen to be a part of. Because most belief systems, many belief systems, are involved with the engagement with a higher focus, meaning some form of focus that is beyond what an individual thinks they're a part of. So that the self-interest part occurs only in relationship with vocalizations, how important you are in a group of people, this kind of thing, how much attention you need under these circumstances. They would have a propensity to be a part of a group, and no one would ever think that they were really significant. That does not devalue them. Matter of fact, that increases their value because they can then be helpful energetically in a quiet way. And they don't need attention for it. It's not necessary because those higher state energies can operate through them and it doesn't affect their bias. They know what's happening and they can see it consciously, and they recognize that that's the only reason. And a very important place where we need help is in our tendency to be somehow exceptionally more important than somebody else. And we all have this in us. You can find your own places. You would need to be watching or observing you, not to find fault, but to find how you are in there, so that you can allow yourself to know exactly how you are inside, so that if there's anything in there energetically that you don't consider you will know it. Now that can be positive or not so positive. I happen to prefer the more positive part. And that means you begin slowly to encounter aspects of you that are akin to loving. And mind you, if you're around a bunch of people at the same time, that can be very disturbing to you. You might drop a tear or two and you're wondering, why is my heart beating? Why does that affect me so much? It's because the heart center has been touched, or the brow, or the solar plexus, or the root or gonad center, in a manner that you're not used to. Now remember, how these forms take place in us is based on how we have been trained to have them take place. They are linked up to past lives. How that life was linked, how that construction of that chakra or center, vortex, whatever you want to call them, was constructed. When you meet someone, they might affect you because they're stimulating you in a way that you're not used to. Learning how to soften that down energetically takes practice. And some of the tools that most of you have, or many of you have, can do that to some degree. Also, you can learn how to talk yourself down. Well, we're not used to that. We're used to blaming somebody. We're used to showing them something, making them pay attention to how they are. As a matter of fact, we don't even see how we are. The inner engagement is paying attention to how we are. That is so helpful without negating. Without negating. And that shifts you into another engagement with another level, and it starts a new cycle all over again of growing. Big cycle, which includes, because it has to fuse with that previous cycle to find a balance so that you won't be vulnerable. And slowly, life is the place where you engage with those shifts and changes and those cycles of linking with a different state, because you've learned how to pull back from the domineering aspect or the dominance aspect or the self-biased aspect of the nature of a form that you'll relinquish ultimately. But in the meantime, it's a tool for functioning here on these planes, and a must. Without them, it's more difficult. So you're learning how to be conscious of other planes while in this one. At the same time, you're learning how to shift your seeing the world into another level and able to look back and watch you act in this one. Yet you don't negate this one. You're trying to be helpful to it. This is a slow process. There's no negation in this. In the meantime, recognize that you have just become more conscious within you beyond what you could be before. And at first, you're probably going to say, yeah, but what's it get me? That would be a natural thing to do. Well, it gets you to the place where you can begin to allow yourself to be softer within you and recognize that many of the things that you do them only because you're vulnerable. You might be hurting. You might be afraid that you're all alone. And you're not. There's that essence of love in you that has been talked about so much everywhere. And that essence, or internalized intensity, one could say, that love can be in many faces. It can be intensity. It can be just real loving, beautiful, peaceful stuff. And as soon as you want to do something else, it converts into whatever it is through love that you want to be or do. That's a dilemma. You can understand that might be a dilemma, because it tends to validate you for your sake, so that you can be the one to perceive through it that you are also learning about how you are and what you are. You are that which you are, but you are that which you do not know. And now let me take another look, Carol, if I can squeeze this one just a little bit more and see if I can come up with something. I think I've talked about the astral or other levels. There's a lot of people that can move into the astral, but they end up acting out with their personalities and as they're operating here on these coarser planes, because there are coarser planes on every level. That is the nature of starting a new cycle of understanding at various levels, and these circles get a little higher and higher, but you don't leave all this stuff behind. It's a pathway. You're part of that pathway. And all those who touch that kind of the pathway are part of that pathway as well. And they are affected by any change, literally, in you, in a manner that would relate to them. So understanding that, it really means that how you engage in this world has an effect on others. Literally. This is another reason why meditation becomes really important. Softening down so you can begin to learn to watch inside, just letting go and looking inside, not caring what you see. Things will come up. The unconscious is a part of you. You are a part of it, but it's a part of you. And you are, as Carl Jung used to say, try to stretch that unconscious out and make it a collective for all of the world. Makes a tremendous amount of sense in a kind of a way. Each and every one of us affect each other. And our species is biased. This is why history is so important for those of you out there who are interested in history. Please take a look at some of the world histories. Yes, I know there are so many individual histories that no one ever gets to see. And also, yes, I understand that the winners of wars make up the history, all of that stuff. Get out of yourself with that one. Understand that you're looking for something different. How is it that we have been over time? How is it that we are? How is it that we can become? It's okay. Can't change the past, you can only change the present. And boy, the present is hard to deal with. Present becomes, tomorrow. People call it the future. It's just one way to look at things. You can also see the constructive aspects in our world. And then they often shift and throw everything out that is of that old elk. Let's only do the new thing. And you take from the old and you take from the new, because the new is going to be somebody else's past. Maybe 2 or 10 generations from now, they'll look back and wonder why we talk like we talk. Perhaps we can look forward to that in a different way. Let's hopefully think that might be possible. Okay, just one more look here, Carol. I think I've covered most of it, and the rest I would just like to say that when you're thinking of learning, when you're reading an interesting book, and if you haven't read stuff like that before, you'll get excited. Good. Hopefully it provokes a curiosity about some of the stuff that we've been talking about. As you know, even inanimate objects that have been touched by people reflect an energy. Some of the stories that people have talked about over the years. And at the same time, we're so fortunate. Life is so precious because transmission can occur in a living being even more. An inanimate object can get transmission from a living being, and that can be helpful as well. But as you grow into a state just a little bit more than where we are, where higher states can operate through us for a particular purpose that relates to higher growing or a broader level of growth. This includes religious orientations, philosophy, creativity of all kinds, science of all kinds. Ideas come out of minds, out of emotional based systems, out of highly charged physical orientations in a constructive manner, as well as other methods, other manners. Yeah. But creativity is very interesting. And the issue here is, but can we broaden our relationship with what we already believe has to be true? I, for one, think it's possible. I think we're just young and we're learning. Even though we've learned so much, still, we've begun to learn, and perhaps that beginning can continue in other levels, perhaps. I know there are people out there that believe they're already grown up, and fine. But consider one minor little detail. Whatever level you have attained, whatever the level may be, and hopefully it's a really enabling one, prepare for the next level and be helpful to others from where you are, and be grateful you're there so that you can be part of the helping. It will be much appreciated, even by those who don't know and can't perceive it. Okay, we're getting a little bit close. This is a question from Dominic in Scotland, Dominic Clark, and very interesting. And thanks, Carol, for that previous one. Could you say something about the energy ascending and energy descending? And do they have a different function, and how do they relate? Oh, boy. Well, this is a really can get to be a really deep question. And it's seen by different people or different belief systems in a whole lot of different ways. So let me give a try at this one, Dom. And whatever you're reading and looking at, just see if it fits. There's an interaction that prepares everybody for continued levels of growth. And that level, as perceived by some belief systems, is basically two ways to engage with it. I think there's more, but anyway, I'll say two ways. One of them is, some people believe that energy comes in from the top of the head, goes right down to the bottom, to the root center, and some believe right to the feet. But that's part of the root center's orientation from what I understand or what I perceive, and stimulates the root center in a way that's different than the root center has been stimulated before. That's how some believe. And then energy comes up from the root center to link up with the center above the head, crown center, or the kether, or whatever you want to call it. Most of these centers are really basically involved with the language that people use who have the beliefs. It doesn't change the fact that the centers are there, or the vortices are there, or the valves are there. Others believe this. The root center is stimulated by others, by some, or by a higher state. Higher state is not talked about too much, but it's talked about to some degree. And it stimulates the root center, which relates to the whole physical body. And energy moves up and through all of these vortices, all the way up, or valves, all the way up to the top, again, to the top. Some say it comes up the front, some say it comes up the back, some say it comes up the center, up through the spine. All kinds of belief systems out here. Okay. Where do you go from there? Whatever level of development occurs, whatever level it is, from the root to the crown, initially, let's start here first. Initially, your personality is made up of energy from the root, energy from the gonad center, energy from the solar plexus, and it's constructed. Energy is off the body as well as in the body. And there may be a trickle of energy right to the top of the head, or it may go up to your neck, or it might go up to your chest, or it might go up to your brow. In our worlds, it seems to me that there's been enough stimulation in attempting to think, attempting to learn, attempting to focus on whatever it is you're doing, whether it be creative art or science or religious background, attempting to engage beyond what you believe, or beyond what you understand, or beyond what you currently are creating, whether it be by painting or whatever you're doing, or science or whatever. So there's a stimulation there. There's a concentration of some kind, very much affixed to the root center, gonad center, solar plexus, heart center, throat center, brow center, crown center of the physical domain, locking in to the emotional disposition, locking in to aspects of the mind. Now, basically, everybody talks about the mind, but basically they're talking about a thinking process, but everything relates to the brain and all its axons all the way through the system. They are sensoring systems, sensing systems, thinking systems, responding systems, regurgitation systems, reconsidering, wondering, trying to figure something out. In those phases, usually the root gonad center and solar plexus can go right up to the top of the head. That's a huge amount of energy coming in. Usually, very small aspects of those three centers come up and affect the heart center, small aspects of those three centers, throat center, brow, and crown. Okay. It's like taking a slice of a cake that's about, the slice of a blade that you cut. Take another slice. So, wow, we have all this potential, but we begin. Now, what we think about that, though, is we've taken the whole cake and there's only a slice left. It's that bias I was talking about in Carol's question. And our belief systems are acutely involved with these things. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's how we see it. So we take it one step at a time. We're involved with that particular step. Remember, the world used to be flat. It rounded out a bit. But both of these levels, going up and coming down, work together. They work together to shift internalizing, shift perception, shift awareness, even shift understanding, broaden out belief systems to engage and to perceive those things that are on a higher level. And they also work with us in the process of perceiving, not becoming more biased about the importance of the perceiver. Could it also go the other way? Unfortunately, I have to say yes. The perceiver can become very important in his or her mind. Happens all the time because that's the world we live in. It's a phase of growth. It's nothing to negate. There's no negation in it, but it can be frustrating for an individual. But that frustration is part of growth too. And our dilemma is this. We're using the small s self and giving it a sense of extreme value, which is what we're trying to do. And the large self S, one could say, the universal aspects of a potential that we talk about all the time as if we know something about it, that is made smaller in the eyes of the little s self. Because there's a kind of misunderstanding in the early phases of growth. Some aspects in that early phase of growth that we learn and perceive begin to disappear. New ways of perceiving begin to broaden out. Or, if you can't live without them, they come roaring back. And new verbiage is given to them. And now they're superior, but it's still biased in relationship to the personality's orientation. I know we're getting close to time, but we're not quite finished yet. There's an idealization that occurs in almost everything. There is and I'm talking about that little self. But without that little self, in the stages that we're in right now, we would have such a difficult time understanding ourselves and being okay with us because of our levels of vulnerability and the views of others relative to how a person should be. This is very difficult for us. As a matter of fact, the idea of actual inner growth, if it doesn't show progress in a certain formulaic way, is considered not growing. And this is just a small flaw in the ointment. On top of this, we have the stimulation now of our brow center, which is profoundly strong and getting stronger. Ultimately, so that our heart center can come on through the engagement that the heart and the throat center have together, and the throat and the brow center have together. I'm not talking about only feeling good, but I'm talking about being able to notice within yourself another, so you can understand the vulnerability, not the flaws, not relevant in that world, but the vulnerabilities of others, and retract your natural biases instead of putting them forward so you can be more important. To be honest, I don't know how long that will take for humanity to get into that one. But it is out there already in some. And we can only hope that we can one day be a part of that, because it sounds so different than what we already are a part of. But keep reminding yourself, there are a lot of lovely, wondrous people out there in our world. I hope, Dominic, this helps a little bit. And please take care of yourselves. And now we're just going to meditate for about 50 minutes or so. And I wish you all well. And we'll talk to you soon. Looking forward to being involved with the seminar coming up on the 13th for North America. Anyway, please take care. Now we'll just begin to do the balancing and the grounding, and have a very good night, everybody. Take care.